Good morning. I am going to try to. Hey, Florin, how's it going? Nice to see you. All right. I don't know why I'm always like, oh, I should try to enable everybody's cameras and mics and stuff, and then nobody. You start working tomorrow? Oh, shoot. So does that mean you're not going to be able to see the last of our other series? Are you working in the evening? Oh, okay. Or you can watch it in the evening, I guess, right? Like, I mean, you can watch it. Oh, good. Excellent. So do you work shift work then, Florin? 8 to, okay. That's just a regular day. Okay. That's all right. We don't know. We're all of us are actually having an in-person meeting um, tomorrow for the first time at the office as well. So we'll see how that goes. Everybody's got to get their briefing and mask up and do all that stuff. So it should be interesting. All right. I'm just going to type one thing. I'm by myself today. So morning, Rhonda. So there we go. So I'm probably not going to be as, I'll do my best to monitor the chat as well, since it's just me, because I'm solo, I'm flying solo. Despite all the people at the bottom of the page, I'm doing this one by myself. So thank you so much, you guys, for joining this morning. I know that there has been a ton of webinars on sleep that have been up and on our HP webinar series since this whole series began. And I had actually hoped to be doing this one many weeks ago, but for a whole number of reasons that just didn't pan out. So hopefully, and clearly there's still a couple of people that either missed those ones or want more information on sleep. So hopefully you're either going to have one of those two different things take place for you this morning. So my webinar is going to focus primarily, it's a bit of a quick and dirty one. Not so quick, I'm going to be speaking a mile a minute because I've got a couple more slides than we usually have in our other series because we try to have those be a little bit more interactive. This one's unfortunately going to be just me rapid fire giving you guys some content. So it's going to be a quick and dirty look at like why sleep is important, why we need to try to make our schedules such that as we all return to work, maybe we need to think a little bit more about how are we going to balance the expectations from work and how I'm going to make sure that I'm going to get the sleep that I need, because I'm going to talk about how important that is in terms both of quality and quantity sleep. We need to get both consistently in order to be as healthy as possible. But of course, first, we have to get through all of the great housekeeping. So the presentation you are about to view is the intellectual property of the Department of National Defense. Any reproduction or transmission of the slides contained is strictly forbidden. Some of the topics contained may be of a sensitive nature and not appropriate for children, so please use parental discretion. Also understand that people's stories are theirs alone to tell. Morning, Chad. And anything that is shared by participants in the webinar, either on camera or in chat, which you don't actually have to worry about too much because the chat doesn't show up, is not to be discussed outside of the webinar. And it is being recorded and will be available for viewing later on. So if you're talking to your people at work saying, hey, there was this great webinar that I saw this morning or whatever day it was, they can still check it out on CAF Connection at any time. So we do encourage active participation, but you can absolutely simply just follow along without participating in the chat, video, or microphone options, because thus far, in the 13 or 14 of these that I have done so far, nobody has spoken. Nobody has spoken. So I don't think that this is a real concern, but that is okay. So with my huge crowd of 5 peeps, I'm still so grateful that you guys are all here. We're going to put the first poll up. You know the drill, guys. Let me know who you are and we can get going. A lot of others today. Okay, that's okay too. I like other. Other's good. Okay, so sleep. So for those of you who are other, some of the military stuff might not seem as relevant, but hopefully you'll be able to put 2 and 2 together. And for you serving members, I want to just say that the images that I have of the military are mostly American military, because finding good calf pictures on combat camera is almost impossible. So if somebody has some kind of quick and easy tip for me to find good pictures on combat camera, I'm all ears. So hence the highly Americanized version of the pictures that you're about to see, but that's okay. All right. So any of you in the military hopefully have heard of the performance triad, mission ready, the balance strategy, all of those kinds of things. And sleep is one of the pieces of that triad. It is considered to be as important as healthy eating and physical activity. And I would argue, based on some of the things that you might have heard me say in the past, that it is probably the most important one, because things kind of fall apart or get put together and work well with sleep holding it all together. It's like the glue that holds everything together. And we need to make sure that we're getting a consistent quality sleep all the time in order for our mission safety and success to be as good and doable and possible. So sleep is really, really, really important. It is absolutely not a luxury. So the thing to remember about sleep is that it affects everybody every day. And you can tell after one day of not having a good sleep, you can feel it. And after several days of not having a good sleep, it really starts to take its toll on how you feel, how you act, how you do things, your judgment, how you interact with people. So we really recognize the importance of it. And our bodies actually do all of the regulation around sleep in the same way that it regulates breathing, need for food, need for water. It's an actual biological need, and we're programmed to do it, to the point that when people have been sleep deprived for long periods of time, they will micro sleep just as a survival mechanism. Sleeps that they don't even recognize that are happening, but their brain's just shutting off for that moment to allow that little bit of a reset to occur. That's how critical it is to our overall health, life, well-being, existence. And we need to have both quantity and quality. So it's important to get those hours that we're going to talk about. And I'm sure any of you who have participated in a previous one are going to be able to give me the answers. So I'm looking forward to seeing that, as well as the quality. So what can we do within our environment that we can control to make sure that we're trying to get the best sleep possible? The really important thing about sleep is that it's not just in terms of how well we function physically, but it impacts how well we learn, retain new knowledge, new training. So all of the things that you do from a training perspective, if your sleep is kind of sketchy, it's going to be a lot harder to remember those things. So we want to make sure that when you're going into training, that you're going in as rested as possible. And when you're going into the field, as ironic as that sounds, that you're getting as much sleep as possible, because clearly you're going to be performing a lot better, and it's going to be a lot safer for everybody concerned when everybody is getting the rest that they need. So when you think about sleep and how tired you are, and my husband was hilarious yesterday where we're watching a show, and granted it was a weird Japanese anime show that my daughter is totally into right now, but you could see him, and he was exhausted, and I don't know from what. He's chronically a bad sleeper anyway, but he's sitting in the chair and you could just see him kind of listing. And I'm surprised he didn't spill his coffee. And of course, why is he drinking coffee at night? We're going to talk about that. But anyway, he's clearly not one that listens to anything that I say. So in terms of sleep latency, like, how do you know? How can you tell? Do you know when you're sleep deprived? And the answer is probably, yeah, you do. But in terms of how sleep deprived you are, there's a really fun non-scientific test that you can do. So it's based on the sleep latency test, which is actually a legit multi-day, multi-nap test done under the supervision of sleep specialists, which is essentially looking at the amount of time that it takes you to fall asleep in a nice, quiet, dark space. So how long does it take you in relatively ideal conditions to fall asleep? The premise behind it is the quicker you fall asleep, the more sleep deprived you are. So that's not necessarily a good thing. So when people say, oh yeah, I go to bed, my head hits the pillow, I'm out, to me, that's a warning flag that says that you probably aren't getting the amount of sleep that you need on a regular basis, because what you should be experiencing is, okay, Chad, then you're screwed. No, I'm kidding. Sometimes it's because we're just that tired. And, you know, like if you've had a day where you've just like laid sod or something, you know, that can be, just takes it out of you, especially if it's hot, you're just exhausted. Sometimes it's, I think, acceptable to recognize that you're just bagged after that day, or if you did Mountain Man or something like that, right? But I'm talking consistently, like you can barely get the pillows up around your neck and you're out all the time. it might indicate that you're not getting sufficient sleep consistently enough in order to be well rested. So you can do this yourself at home. So what you're going to do is you're going to lay on your bed or on the sofa, and you're going to hold a spoon in one hand, and that hand is going to hang over the edge of the bed or the sofa. And on the floor underneath where your hand is, you're going to put a cookie sheet or some kind of a metal tray. You're going to set your stopwatch or your timer on your phone, and you're going to try in this really contrived state to fall asleep. The premise being that when you fall asleep, your hand relaxes, you drop the spoon, it makes a horrible noise when it hits the cookie sheet, it jolts you awake, you check your stopwatch to see how long it took you to fall asleep. If you're falling asleep within 15 to 20 minutes, that's about average. That's what science says takes you to sort of settle down at the end of the day, calm down, get your breathing and heart rate and everything slowed down enough to fall asleep. So that's about average. If you're 10 minutes-ish or less, then you might need to think about trying to get a little bit more sleep more consistently. And if you're falling asleep 5 minutes or less, like it's time to let the rubber hit the road and make some changes so that you can make sure that you are not so exhausted at any moment when you're given that opportunity to go to sleep. So how much sleep does a person actually need? How many hours do you guys think of sleep we need, the average person? Like average between the ages of 18 and like 65. So that's a big, broad range of ages. What do you got? What are your guesses? 8, 7 to 9. Yeah, exactly. You're bang on. That's exactly what we need. And the research will show that people who get about that amount of sleep on a consistent basis tend to live longer, healthier lives than people who either get consistently less sleep than that or consistently more sleep than that. There's actually a danger in sleeping too much. I don't know what all the exactly happens from the too much sleeping. I highly doubt that there's a ton of people that fall into that category, and there's probably it's even more difficult to research that than the other way around. So yeah, we need about that much sleep consistently, and that's going to give or take depending on when you're traveling and there's jet lag or all kinds of different situations like that and life stuff that happens. We're going to talk about those things a little bit. So hopefully that's going to be our target. If you know for yourself that you're in that 5 to 6 hour zone right now and you feel like you're doing okay, you probably are, but it's a good idea to try to get yourself as close to that 7 to 9 as possible. Yeah, well, it would be nice to be able to sleep the length of a newborn, for sure. Sometimes there's days I'm sure that people would like to just hibernate, but yeah. So we're going to take a look at the stages just very quickly of sleep that we're in, and again, why those are all important. And I'm not going to spend a ton of time on them, but just to say, in the first couple of stages, 1 to 2, that's when you're just starting to fall asleep. So this is when you're nodding off in front of the television. You can still hear the TV. You can still hear somebody like rattling around in the kitchen or whatever, but you're starting to drift off. By stage 2, you're still in light sleep. It's still characterized as light sleep, but you're less aware of what's going on now. You actually are now resting. So this is kind of where you're at in ideally the napping time, where you're getting that break, that power sleep that your brain's needing to just kind of do a little bit of a reset, a recharge. And it's also the stage out of which you wake up when you wake up without an alarm clock. So when you sort of wake up because you start hearing things, or the birds, or in our case, crows outside the window, you're in a state of light sleep, and now you're waking up. The problem with the alarm clock is it just goes off at whatever time, and so it's sometimes jarring you out of a really deep sleep, and that's really difficult to wake up from because you have this thing called sleep inertia, and it feels like you're dragging yourself out of like a syrup bog. So that's the first couple of stages of sleep. Stages 3 and 4 is now your deep sleep. This is the restorative sleep. This is where your brain is kind of doing very little, very deep, slow waves. Your breathing is regular. Your body temperature has decreased. Everything is nice and slow and calm and cool. This is actually when, surprisingly enough, you are going to get up and sleepwalk or have night terrors or nightmares. And the dreams that you're having here are completely different than the types of dreams that you're having in REM sleep. But this deep sleep is the restorative sleep. This is the time where all the magic happens in terms of our immune system, muscle building, fat burning. All of the repair and regeneration that we want to occur happens in that deep stage of sleep. Then the The last stage of sleep, the fifth stage, or REM sleep, the rapid eye movement sleep, known for the, your eyeballs moving under your eyelids, that's where your brain is fully active. Your breathing is shallow, your heart rate goes up, your blood pressure goes up, you're actually in a state of paralysis, so you can't act on the things that your brain might be enacting in your mind. And this is an additionally important part, because this is a part of the sleep cycle where a lot of the experiences and the days of events all get kind of laid down into a path that makes sense in your mind in terms of memories and moving forward and retention and all that kind of stuff. We're going to talk a little bit more about that. So that all those stages, we want all of them to happen as often as possible, and they all take place in succession 4, 5, 6, 7 times a night, depending on how long you're able to sleep. And the amount of time spent in each of them changes as you go through each successive cycle through each of those stages. So you want to go through all of those as many times as possible, with the times of each of them either increasing or decreasing as is required by sleep. We don't have any control over that. We don't get to go to bed and say, well, tonight I want extra REM sleep, and that's going to happen. It happens, and we don't know why. We just need to try to make sure, therefore, to get those 7 to 9 hours so that we can increase the chances that we're going to get all the sleep in all those phases that we need. So the benefits of each of those stages I alluded to a little bit. The deep sleep, that's the restorative sleep. That's where we're going to be taking care of our physical well-being, as well as part of that is going to be clearing out a drawer. I'm going to be talking about the drawer in our head, the messy desk drawer that we're going to sort out when we're in deep sleep. And then the REM sleep is also responsible for part of that. And then just the experiences and our emotional health is regulated a lot by the REM sleep. The thing about our bodies and how amazing they are is that if you had a really disrupted sleep and for whatever reason you're not getting enough REM sleep that night, the next night things will shift so that you get more REM sleep to kind of make up for that. The problem is you're robbing Peter to pay Paul, because now you're getting more REM sleep, but it's coming at the expense of your deep sleep, so you're not getting as much of that deep restorative sleep, which is why it's important that you have as much of both consistently instead of having to take one from the other in order to try to make up this crazy balance. So why is sleep so important? What all does it do? Well, we've talked a little bit, like just touched briefly on some of those things. It's important for all of our body processes, our physical, mental, emotional, and relationship, interestingly enough. And we'll talk about that just in a minute. And really, sleep is the great equalizer, right? Like if you've had a super awesome sleep after a super crappy day, the next day just seems so much better. There's more potential. You think you can do stuff better. There's more positivity. There's just a better sense of well-being, and that notion that, it's okay. Yesterday sucked, but I had a great sleep. I'm ready to tackle the day today and move on and make it even better. Our thoughts are clearer, and we're emotionally less fragile. So we're less likely to flip out over little things, because it just kind of is water off a duck's back. The opposite to that, of course, is if we haven't had a good day and then every little thing gets on our nerves and we're like losing our minds over the silliest things. The other thing that we really, especially from our serving folks perspective, is a safety perspective. And actually that applies to everybody as well. Like if you're driving to work, you don't want to be doing that sleep deprived, because you're going to make mistakes. Your judgment goes down, your reaction time is slower, your ability to process information quickly is hampered, and it just becomes a real liability. So from a safety angle, we want to really make sure that people are getting the sleep that they need, because we don't want accidents happening that could have been prevented had people just been well rested enough. So we've got the physical restoration that happens, our muscles are being repaired, our immune system is being strengthened to fight off, whatever, COVID, or just the common cold, or deal with allergies or any of the pollutants and things that are in our environment. It keeps your heart healthy, because adequate sleep helps with the whole inflammation process, so we don't put ourselves at risk for the inflammatory things that lead to heart disease and problems with our cardiovascular system. It reduces our risk of diabetes because it helps to regulate our glucose and insulin systems so that we don't end up with like a metabolic syndrome happening. And because it also helps to regulate our weight, because when we're sleeping and we're in that nice deep sleep, that's when we're building fat and burning muscle. So from a body weight perspective, sleep is really, really important because it does a couple of things. It impacts our ability to deal with stress. And when we have too much stress, we have too much adrenaline. We have too much adrenaline for too long. We have too much cortisol, and cortisol makes us lay down fat right in our abdominal area. So in our belly, right? Like that's our what's it called? Our Molson muscle, right? So we don't want that. The double whammy to that is if we have extra cortisol, we're already wanting to lay down fat. Too little sleep throws our hunger hormones out of whack. So now our ghrelin goes through the roof and we're hungry all the time, and our leptin goes down and we're never full. So we're always like, oh, I'm always hungry and I don't have an off button. And so now we've got this cortisol that's laying down all this fat and these hunger hormones that are saying, bring it on. And it's not saying, hey, where's the broccoli? Oh no, those hunger hormones are saying, where's my high fat, high sugar, delicious French fries and milkshakes and whatever, right? So those are the things that we're going to be craving. So we need to be really cautious about that, which is another reason we make poor choices when we're tired, because that's what our body is telling us that we want, because we think it's going to give us that energy to get us through. The part around information processing, memorization is really, really important. And I love this analogy. It's from the University of Arizona. And so in each of the hemispheres of our brain, we have a hippocampus. And that hippocampus is like a drawer that we put all the stuff in that we experience or learn or do over the course of the day. It's like the desk drawer that everybody has that they throw all their crap in. At the end of the day, when we're in our slow wave sleep, it's in that period of time that drawer is emptied and all those things are put away properly in the right filing system in our brain. So we can then retrieve it when we want it instead of trying to root around in that drawer at some point. Because the problem is there's only the two drawers, right, on either half of our brain. And every day it's going to get filled up. And if it doesn't get a chance to be emptied at night, there's never going to be enough stuff in that drawer or room in that drawer because there's going to be too full of stuff. And all those new things that we're learning are never going to be able to be properly stored, filed, and cataloged so that we can access it when we want to. So we want to make sure that we're giving our brains an opportunity to do that part of the house cleaning, as well as the step 3 piece, which is the cleaning the brain of the day's buildup, which also happens during that slow wave sleep. It's like we go through the car wash and our brain shrinks a little bit and all the cerebrospinal fluid washes around our brain and it gets rid of all the cellular waste and it decreases our chance of degenerative brain dysfunction that may manifest itself at some point later in life as either dementia or Alzheimer's or premature memory loss, things that we can prevent simply just by making sure that we're getting enough sleep. Now, I'm not saying we can prevent Alzheimer's or dementia. I'm just saying we can increase the chances that we're going to have a better chance of fighting those things by making sure that we're taking care of ourselves now. Some of those things, it's just in the cards. It doesn't matter. Sadly, it is what it is. And those are just that's the bed that we're going to have to learn to live in when we get to those situations in our life. So just to be clear. Never mind the junk drawer. Well, that's a good question, Rhonda. I don't know. Sometimes I think we just are overwhelmed and we need to take a break. So sometimes I think we need to cut ourselves a little bit of slack. Sometimes I think we need to remember that we cannot multitask. Multitasking is not a thing. And sometimes the things that I think are cobwebs are us just trying to figure out, like, what of the 97 things that I have on the go am I supposed to be working on right now? Because I'm trying to do 3 of them and none of them are working for me. So absolutely, a combination of stress and lack of sleep, totally, 100%. And we're going to talk about stress in just a second. So how does all of that impact our relationships? Well, if you are cranky and grumpy and irritable, people don't want to be around you. So whether those are the people that you work with or the people that you live with, they want you to be far, far away when you're not getting enough sleep. So just in terms of how we interact with one another is so much better when we're well rested. I mean, I have a 11-year-old going on 27 right now and super cranky. I don't know how much sleep she's going to need, but I'm like, you need to go away. So yeah, I know, but it's hurting my heart. All right. Okay. So what we need to try to think about is sleep as a bank account, and we want to always be in the black, right? So knowing what we know about how important sleep is for us, we need to treat it in that same kind of a way. We can pay back some lost sleep, but not as much as we think we can. It's sort of like going to Money Mart. You can get some money, but it costs you way more than if you just were able to deal with, your paycheck in a normal bank in a normal kind of a way. Because sleep is restorative. You need to have it on the day that you need it. So if you get 2 hours, say, less sleep one night, you can make up for 1 hour of that lost sleep, but it takes 4 days. So you're never actually catching up. So if you are in the 5 to 6 hour range, you need to be in the 7 to 9 hour range, and you're doing that 5 to 6 hours for the whole week, right? Do the math. You get to catch up one of those hours in 4 days. So you're going to be perpetually behind the 8 ball. So we really need to try to shift our days to allow for that sleep. We need to stop putting that as if I have enough time, I'll sleep because I'll have all the time to sleep when I'm dead. We need to kind of get rid of that notion, right? We need to try to make sure that we're getting the sleep that we need right now. So we need to avoid getting into that sleep deficit because we're never going to fully be able to recover from that. But we've all been there, right? Like every single person can think of a situation in which they were unable to get the sleep that they needed. Yeah, right. I mean, and that's what happens. Our body just kind of says, I need to go to bed. Like at some point, your body just decides, and you don't have any say because it's now shutting down. So if you've had a baby at some point, or you know of someone, or a puppy, which is exactly the same thing, they're up all night and you need to be with them. So we've all had those opportunities to not experience the sleep that we need. So it's that sleep that we should be getting minus the sleep that we get equals the sleep debt. And now you multiply that over 1 or 2 kids or 3 dogs or 5 years of shift work or whatever, and you can see how that deficit starts to become kind of an insurmountable thing. And just like financial debt, we need to try to start to dial that back in order to feel better and operate better and just be better. And it's a hard thing to say because sometimes it feels like you truly are behind a giant boulder and it's going to crush you. But you need to be, instead of the cartoons, I've never understood, why do the cartoons just keep running in a straight line? Why don't they just zig off to the side, right? And then the boulder will go past them. That's what we need to do. We need to step off to the side, let the boulder go past us, and figure out, stop and regroup. So that's what we need to try to do. And I know that's easier said than done. Because really what we want to do is we want to avoid both the short-term and the long-term effects of sleep deprivation, right? The short-term stuff, the mental fog, the poor choices, the snappy responses to people, the just general irritability, even impaired vision. I don't know if any of you can think of a time when you were so tired and you put your glasses on and you take your glasses off and you're like, oh my gosh, I can't see. It's probably because you're too tired, right? So I think sometimes we forget the impact of sleep that it has even in the short term. What's really freaky is that in the long term, we're talking about actual genetic changes that happen, like at the cellular level, where up to 3% of the genes in our body are affected by lack of sleep. And that genetic change happens after only 1 week of sleep deprivation. So it's not something that is going to kill you tomorrow, but it's also something that will over time potentially manifest itself into something so that, maybe I don't want to be 102 and in a wheelchair and having someone have to feed me and stuff. But if I can be a vital, vibrant 85 or 90-year-old, well, then I want to be that person, right? And so I want to make sure that what I'm doing even right now from a sleep perspective is going to get me more to be that vital 85-year-old as opposed to that in a wheelchair 102-year-old, because I don't want to be that person, right? I mean, I don't know that I have much of a choice. Maybe that's going to be my destiny one way or the other, but I want to hedge my bets a little bit and do what I can to be the person like Nan, who lives down the street from me. She's still washing her walls and cleaning her gutters and doing all, and she's 85 and she's amazing. And she's like, if you ring the doorbell, because I brought her cupcakes the other day, if you ring the doorbell, it might take me a while to get to you because I'm downstairs on the computer. I'm like, man, you're an inspiration. She's like, oh, I live on that thing. She was just the cutest. Anyway, so yeah, the only way to eliminate sleep debt is to get good sleep. And we, as I said, we need to make that a priority. when you look at a show like MASH, I don't know why I'm using all these old shows to try to make points, but if you ever watched MASH and it was during, like, they've got surgery after surgery after surgery because like there was like some serious carnage happening somewhere and they're running on adrenaline. But you can see, even though it's like a somewhat of a comedy, it's a dramedy show, um, you can see the errors and the judgment calls and the things that are starting to slip. So adrenaline can only go so far in those situations. And I'm going to talk about sleep banking in a minute, but you want to still not put yourself in a situation that you're hoping that adrenaline is going to help you to make the right decision. You want to be able to be in a place that you're making the right decision because you've put yourself in a place that you are going to do that safely and not have there be an impact on all the other people around you as well. Thank you, Jean-Paul. Yeah, it's such a good show. I think it still holds the record of the most people watching the final episode of that of all time, but I could have that wrong. Anyway, so someone had mentioned a way up in the chat, Rhonda, about stress and sleep. And that is absolutely a thing, right? The stress sleep cycle. And we have often found ourselves in a sleep debt because of that, right? So something's happened, something in your life is just totally derailed and it impacts your sleep. And because of that crappy sleep, your ability to deal with the stuff that's happening, that big event plus the day-to-day stuff, it builds up. You don't do as well. Your sleep is shitty. Now you're sleeping even more poorly. And now you're stressing out about not sleeping. And then that just becomes that spiral. And it's really hard to break out of that. And sometimes that one life event, whatever that might be, causes a person to kind of get into that state where they now deem themselves to be an insomniac. And insomnia is one of those things that really 10%, it says 10% of people suffer from some degree of insomnia. And I was surprised that it was that low of a number, but maybe there's other numbers out there. But what is really interesting about insomnia is that it's actually not a nighttime problem. It's a 24-hour issue. It's an all-day problem because the stuff that's keeping you awake is the stuff that is probably causing you stress, or sorry, yeah, the stuff that's keeping you awake at night is the stuff that's giving you stress over during the day. So people who have insomnia tend to be people who have maybe a little bit more anxiety about things, like we're not talking chronic depression or chronic anxiety or any of those sort of diagnose things. Maybe there is a relationship there as well, but I'm just talking in terms of they're a little bit more worked up about things. And so that sticks with them. And then their wheels are spinning all night long. And that keeps them awake. So it's kind of one of those things again, where if you want to deal with one thing, you need to deal with the other thing. So sometimes we need to back up the bus a little bit. So is there something you can do to deal with that stress, to deal with the stuff that's causing you to be anxious, that will therefore allow you to sleep better at night? And so at the end of every single webinar that has been presented over the course of this last 3.5, 4 months has been that resources slide. And we really, really try to emphasize the importance of that, because if you're looking at trying to take advantage of this time to make these changes, to do things better, now is the time to look at what are those steps maybe that are a few behind where I am right now that are going to help me in this stage. I want to sleep better, but I need to deal with the fact that I'm still, stressing about my ex-husband or whatever, right? So those are things that you need to recognize in yourself to say, okay, I'm not sleeping because of this. And if you don't know why, maybe that's a conversation that you have. So, and we know this to be true because when they do the research on people with, self-diagnosed insomnia, they're actually getting 6.5 to 7 hours of sleep. But because every time they wake up, because their sleep is very disrupted, in those moments that they're waking up, they're thinking about the stuff that's freaking them out or stressing them out. There's that rumination that happens, and then they fall back asleep. So by the time they wake up in the morning, they don't feel rested because the REM sleep has been interrupted, and they keep remembering that they've been thinking about this stuff that is, working 24/7 on their mind. So it's a really interesting phenomenon and something that is going to take a little bit longer to sort out for people, but certainly worth investigating, worth getting sorted out. So when we're talking about stress, obviously it's the Goldilocks approach with everything. You want to make sure you have enough. Too much is bad, as we just discussed, but too little is also bad. So we need to try to find enough to get us motivated, to make us do those things, to try to excel at whatever it is that our job or our role is, and really feel like we've accomplished something at the end of the day, right? We need to find that balance. Even when you're on holiday, if you're on a 10-day, I don't know how long, I've never been on a all-inclusive thing to Mexico or whatever. I've never swam up to a bar, but apparently it's really great. So, by, I'm sure, day 3 or 4, it's like, well, I could get another pina colada, or maybe I could go do something else, right? So you still need to have a little bit of something to make you be motivated to do something, even when you're on holiday in some beautiful tropical destination. You still need to have some reason to get up and do something. We also have to recognize the things over which we have control and let go of the things over which we have no control. And that is so much easier said than done, because that is my life in a nutshell. But I think that a lot of people can probably relate to that. Because when you start to take control over the things that you can and let go of the things that you can't, all of a sudden you've got this power back and you're feeling like you're actually making some positive headway instead of spinning your wheels and being frustrated and exhausted and thinking about how frustrated and exhausted you are at night, right? So it's a hard kind of pill to swallow, and sometimes it seems a little bit contrite to say, but sometimes the only alternative to stress is figuring out a way to let that shit go. Because if you don't, it's gonna win. Like, it will win. You will not win. You hanging on to that stuff and letting it impact your sleep, which is going to impact your health, like, you just got to let it go. There's another show, Dharma and Greg. It's really old. It wasn't really on that long, but she had this great visual. She's like, just put it in a bubble and blow it away. And as corny and cheesy as that sounds, I think it has stayed with me because it's such a great image. And yeah, it's super hard to do, but if we can, then it helps us in the long run for so many things. So let's take a look at what we can do beyond that, which is the hard stuff. That's a whole series of webinars just right there on that topic alone. But let's take a look at what we can do from a sleep perspective and sleep hygiene, which I just still think is the funniest word, because anyway, really all it means is, what are you doing to ensure that you have the best possible sleep? Taking control, again, of the things that you can to impact that the length of time and how comfortable and the environment that you're finding yourself in set up so that you get a good night's sleep on a consistent basis. So the easiest place to start is in your bedroom. So try to create a space that is a sanctuary away from the rest of the world. It doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to be expensive. It just needs to be comfortable. It needs to be dark, and it needs to be cool. And ironically, it's easier to have a cool bedroom in the winter than it is in the summer, unless you have air conditioning, which we don't. But if you can get your bedroom about 18 degrees, that's what they're finding to be the best temperature, because you're not too hot and not too cold, because you know what it's like to be too hot or too cold. It wakes you up, right? So about 18 degrees, nice and dark, no clutter. So try to eliminate, if you're in a tiny little 1-bedroom apartment or a bachelor suite and everything is all in one space, as much as you can, try to compartmentalize. So either have a dividing wall or a sheet or some kind of thing so that you don't see the computer, so you don't see the mess, so that you at least have some privacy, that you have a nice little bubble in which you can retreat to like a cocoon at night. Avoid caffeine after 2. Alcohol, this is so funny. Alcohol affects, it's not funny, the next thing I'm going to say, well, I think it's funny, but alcohol, caffeine, nicotine, and cannabis, as well as a bunch of other things, all impact REM sleep. So if you're going to drink, you want to try to drink earlier in the day than later in the day. So if you can start drinking at noon, it would actually be better for your sleep. I'm not recommending that, like totally not recommending that from a work perspective or a safety perspective, only from the idea of what it's going to do to your sleep. So if you're going to drink earlier in the day rather than as close to bed as, or like closer to sleeping time, because that wouldn't be good. So day drinking, I know. I know. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is recorded. So just let me be clear. I'm not encouraging everybody to go have a lunchtime bender. So just please, that's not what I'm saying. But we want to make sure that we're doing things that isn't going to inadvertently affect our sleep later at night, especially that REM sleep. Um, and nicotine, for any smokers out there, is a stimulant, and it will interrupt your sleep. Depending on how heavy of a smoker you are, you will go into withdrawal at night and wake up because you need to have a cigarette. So just some things to think about if you're maybe considering quitting smoking at some point if you're a smoker. So that's what we want. Nice, comfy room, read before bed, consider the safety. If you're in the field, obviously sleep and safety is a bit of a consideration. So just make sure that, there's not stuff going on around you that's going to potentially put you in danger when you're sleeping, such as it is. You guys know more where of that looks like than I do, so enough about that. So what about other things that will affect our sleep? And exercise is one of them. And I was actually saying to my husband yesterday that I can really tell on the days that I don't do a workout, my sleep seems to not be as good as on the days that I do. The kicker there is it needs to be well timed. So you want to make sure that you're exercising not within 3 hours of bedtime. And anybody who's ever played hockey and had those really late ice times knows how jacked up you are at the end of the game or the practice or the shinny or whatever, and you're not going to sleep for like an hour or two after that because you're just vibrating, right? Like there's just too much going on. So we want to try to make sure that that exercise happens as, again, early in the day as possible. So you want to also use caffeine wisely. So while caffeine is a performance booster, or it can be for some people, some of the time, not all the time, that's again a whole other webinar topic. Use that before 2 o'clock in the afternoon because it will have, due to its half-life, an impact even as late as 8 or 10 o'clock at night. So just make sure that you're minimizing that. If for whatever reason your schedule doesn't allow for you to be able to work out until later on, and you still want to get that workout in because of how it makes you feel and because of the goals that you might have, do try to just take some extra time at the end, as ironic as that sounds, or as strange as that sounds. Take a little bit of extra time at the end to just stretch, cool down, then have a nice hot shower, because that temperature increase and then subsequent decrease will help again to sort of trick your body into being ready for sleep. So that will help as well. And then the last piece of the exercise connection is the hydration. So making sure that you're well hydrated, because being dehydrated will increase your heart rate at night, which will cause you to wake up. So making sure that you're well enough hydrated that that's not happening, but not so well hydrated that you have to get up to go to the bathroom. It's an interesting question, Rhonda, in terms of cannabis and sleep, because we know that it impacts REM sleep, and yet people have started using it to help them to relax and sleep. So I think the question is, who is prescribing it? What else is going on? And what are the monitoring things perhaps that are happening? Because alcohol is the same thing. If you have a glass of a wine or a beer or a cooler or something, it will perhaps help you to fall asleep faster, but the quality of that sleep is impacted because it has a negative impact on your REM sleep. So you will fall asleep, you'll maybe have more light and potentially restorative sleep, but the REM sleep is going to be impacted. And the same is true of antidepressants, sleep medication, some cold medications, benzodiazepines, all kinds of medications have that impact. It helps you to sleep, but it doesn't actually give you the sleep that you need because it's impacting the REM sleep. So it's a real double-edged sword. So I'm not really sure what the full answer to that is. That would be something that a person who's more well-versed in cannabis and all of its different components would be better able to answer, or a pharmacist person from pharmacy, or pharmacist. Okay, there you go. That's what I'm trying to say. So what about the food we choose? Well, and interestingly, with food and sleep, it's kind of like the chicken or the egg, because if you're not eating well, oftentimes sleep isn't great. But if you're getting insufficient sleep, you're often also not making good food choices. So again, from the perspective of all kinds of webinars available to give you ideas on how to eat well, but what we want to maybe think about are what are some foods that could fit into that healthy eating that might give you a little bit of an advantage as far as sleep is concerned. And one of those things is foods high in tryptophan, which is the stuff that we think about at Thanksgiving and turkey. So other foods that are high in tryptophan other than turkey are milk, yogurt, and cheese. And I'm going to talk about the milk products in just a second. Eggs, chicken and turkey, fish like tuna, beans, nuts, seeds, and oats. So oats is a great one because it's got a whole bunch of great characteristics that are super good to have as a bedtime snack, actually, and then in combination with maybe some milk or some cottage cheese, although that sounds really disgusting. Anyway, there's lots of good benefits to be had from that, as well as bananas and edamame of all things. So those are foods that are particularly high in tryptophan. So you might want to try to, if sleep is something that you're struggling with, it might be worth considering incorporating these foods into, yeah, maybe. So here's the thing, right? We don't know what all of those interactions are, because we know that the complex carbohydrate in the oatmeal is going to give your body additional serotonin. Serotonin, when in the presence of vitamin D, which we're going to get now from the sun, or a vitamin D supplement in the night, in the winter. Oh my God, you're confusing me with your munchies. So in the sun, we're going to get the vitamin D that we need in the summer months. So from May to October. From October to May, we need to supplement because we're not going to have enough vitamin D. We need the vitamin D to make sure that the serotonin can be converted into melatonin. So the complex carbohydrates, high in serotonin, vitamin D converts the serotonin to melatonin. Melatonin helps us sleep. So the serotonin keeps us asleep. The melatonin helps us to get to sleep. How that offsets the weed, I have no idea, but maybe it'll work. I don't know. If you're doing those other things, then you probably don't need the weed. I'm thinking have the oatmeal, skip the weed. That's just me. But yeah. So before bed, oatmeal, absolutely. Bowl of cereal with some milk, great choice. Proverbial hot glass of milk, also a good choice. If you're thinking about including a milk product, I would go, and you're into bodybuilding or even just weight training, I would go with maybe a cottage cheese, because the casein is a nice slow release, slow absorbed kind of protein that is going to allow that deep restorative sleep to have access to those amino acids that are going to be able to build up your muscles and repair and get you all buff and, you know, great overnight. So there you go. That's my final story on cottage cheese and sleep. And I'm not talking about weed anymore. So this next slide is kind of out of order, but I couldn't figure out where better to put it in. But it's a question of how are we going to reset our sleep? So if we're making better choices in terms of the foods that we're eating, then we're going to hopefully be eating, sleeping better. Yes. Go. Children. But you can reset your sleep. So we're wanting to do a couple of things. Everything that we've talked about so far. So how's your bedroom? Is it set up nice and sanctuary-like? Screens are gone. We're going to talk about more that in a minute. You're eating something to promote sleep because of serotonin, vitamin D, melatonin connection. And now you're going to say to yourself, okay, I know that I need to get up at 5:45. So dial that back 7 to 8 hours. I need to go to bed around 9:45 at night. Haha, who can do that? Well, if you're not there yet, you're going to just do it incrementally. So you're going to just try to go to bed 5, 10, 15 minutes earlier every night until you get to the place where A, you're able to wake up without an alarm clock. B, fall asleep in that kind of magic 15, 20 minutes. So you're not lying there awake going, it's not my bedtime yet, so why am I in bed, right? We don't want that to happen. That's why you're dialing back the bedtime gradually. And then you're going to hopefully be able to start to do that consistently. The really important thing about a sleep schedule is that it becomes not just the routine for Monday to Friday, but Monday to Sunday. You have to try to do that consistently, because if you are really good during the week, but it's party, like it's 1999 on the weekend, you got to reset every Sunday night. So we want to try to be consistent. You can give yourself, an hour or so play on the weekend to hang out with friends or have a fire or whatever. But you want to try to stay as consistent as possible again, for the long run. Holidays and things, that happens, and then you just know you're going to have to do a reset, right? I mean, and that's just one of those things that's kind of reality, and it's a choice that we make. As with everything, it's all choices that we make. So we can do that. You just have to be consistent about it. And then we're going to try to figure out some things that we can do to work with the light, and some things that we can do before bed, as well as the choices that we've made in terms of exercise, foods that we've eaten, being well hydrated, and all those kinds of things. Come on. Yoda is so cute, Florin. I love him. So when we're talking about light, we're talking about the implication of our circadian rhythm. And so the hypothalamus is the timekeeper in our brain. And that has, since we've been walking upright, deciding for us when we're tired and when we're not tired. And that's in part due to the impact of the light. So as the light gets brighter, it stimulates a decrease in melatonin production. We get ready to go. We're more alert, and our blood pressure, breathing, and everything goes up, and we're ready to face the day. At night, conversely, when the light starts to decrease, our body increases melatonin production, our body temperatures go down, and we're saying to ourselves, hey, feeling sleepy, time to go to bed. What we've done is, because of all of the availabilities of artificial light, partly because we need to see in the dark, and it's dark at 5 o'clock in Edmonton in the winter, so we need to have light, but it impacts our body's ability to use that internal timekeeper to regulate our sleep. So, and the brain doesn't identify artificial light, real light. It's just saying, oh, light, I must still have to be awake. So even when you're feeling sleepy, when that light hits our pineal gland, it's like, oh, bing, got to be awake, decreased melatonin production, not sleepy yet. So we need to try to figure out, again, how can we live in a society that we need to function in, with the light that we have to be able to do the jobs that we need to do, in a functioning kind of fashion. So first thing, try to minimize the amount of time you spend staring at a screen kind of after supper. That would be the big one. So if you need to watch TV to relax a little bit, fine. If you need to play a little Candy Crush, fine. But about an hour before, ideally, you're going to put your screens away. You're going to take the television out of your bedroom. If you need to watch TV to get sleepy, watch TV in the living room. When you're sleepy, go to bed. And that's because all of that light that's emitted is keeping us alert. It's keeping us from wanting to go to sleep. And it's impacting our partner. If the bedroom has a TV and our partner is trying to sleep, the light is still causing them to be as stimulated, even though it's not even hitting their eyes. It's getting all the photoreceptors that are on our body externally. So we want to make sure that we're either using an e-reader, if we're wanting to read before bed. We're going to talk about that in one slide. That doesn't have either a backlit, or it says that it's got the e-ink technology, which doesn't do that same thing. It doesn't stimulate that pineal gland and make us be alert. The other thing that you want to do is get your phone out of your bedroom. So if your phone is your alarm clock, invest in a $10 alarm clock at Canadian Tire and put your phone somewhere else. Because I've seen it in class. When we're teaching, the phone is there and it's face down. They're listening to us, but they're checking their phone. And this isn't even a work phone, right? Like, this is just the phone. Like, this is, oh my gosh, did I miss a tweet or an Instagram post or an update or whatever? Like, people are needing to look at that. Like, it's fear of missing out, FOMO. So if you put your phone away, know that the alarm clock is going to wake you up, then, that gives you one less reason to have to be looking at that screen, and one less time your body is stimulated by that blue light, especially that 400 nanometer blue light range. And we know that it has some potential implications, even just in terms of eye health, right? Like, sleep aside, macular degeneration and all that stuff. So what can we do at night if we're supposed to not be on our screens? Well, we can do what works for children beautifully, is read. So reading is an ages-old way to get ready to sleep. And it's such a good proven relaxation strategy, because it actually distracts you from the stressors and worries that can keep you from falling asleep in the first place. Make sure that the book that you're reading isn't going to be one that gets you all worked up. So maybe don't read, a horror book, or something about the crash of the stock market, or something that's going to make you be worried, but something that's engaging and gets your imagination going, and just helps you to escape for a bit, right? Like it's essentially a relaxation and an escape mechanism. The difference between reading and watching TV is that when you watch TV, you don't have to do anything. Your brain literally does nothing. You are consuming less energy watching television than reading a book. Like, true story. Because you have to do so very little in front of the television. Whereas when you're reading, your brain is actively engaged in creating the imagery that you're seeing as words and living through the characters or whatever the plot of the story might happen to be. So you're firing all kinds of different neural pathways. You're using different aspects of your brain that are associated with vision and language and associative learning. And so there's good things going on while you're reading, and it's making you sleepy, usually in about 6 minutes. And again, I think we've all been there. It's been such a good book. We just can't put it down. And the next thing you know, it's 2 a.m. and so much for reading before bed. But, it is a good way to relax if you're able to put the book down and sort of stick to that 6 minute or a chapter or whatever, ideally. So reading works for kids, great for grownups as well. Other things that you can do, progressive muscle relaxation. In all of our stress management classes, we have people participate in different relaxation strategies, and progressive muscle relaxation is one of them, where you just start. I like starting at my feet and then tightening the muscles, and then all the way up your legs and through your abs and your back and your shoulders until all of a sudden you sort of feel like you're floating on a cloud, and then you squeeze all your facial muscles and relax, and then you just kind of hopefully drift off. Humming has the same kind of effects because it relaxes all of the muscles. So you could hum yourself a lullaby, go to sleep. I would like to see I would like to see that in practice, but I'm not a very good hummer, so I don't tend to do that. Stuff like worrying about tomorrow and the whole notion of that insomnia and that sort of anxiety about stuff that's going to be happening. If you write it down, even if you can't read it, just the act of writing it down, if you have a paper and a pencil beside your bed and something pops into your head, you just write it on the paper, knowing that it's there for you to review in the morning and hopefully it's legible, is enough to let you be able to release that in the moment so that you can focus back on sleeping. So it's just little easy strategies like that that can be really helpful. And that's why for people, journaling before bed is a really good way, because it's kind of catharsis. It's a release. It gets everything out, and then they can just go to bed. It's on paper. If they want to review it, they can. If they don't want to, they don't have to. But it's out, and it's no longer wrangling around in their brain. Sound meditation. So it's, summertime, the windows might be open, but you're going to hear the traffic noise and stuff. So you might need to get a white noise machine or a fan or something to just that low hum drone. And the reason that that's so effective is because our brains don't recognize that as a threatening noise, whereas a dog barking or a car backfiring or someone walking by and coughing, your brain recognizes that as a potential threat. So if you can drown that out with that white noise, it helps you again to fall into that relaxed state so that you can just kind of let go and go to sleep. And if that doesn't work, you can practice some breathing exercises. I actually had a hard time last night. I don't know why, falling asleep. So I used Dr. Andrew Weil's 4-7-8 breath. So you breathe in for 4, hold it for 7, and exhale for 8. And you do that 4 times. It's the same as the 4x4x4 combat breathing, same kind of an idea. If there's one that you're already good at or have practiced, use that. Because when you're focusing on your breath, you're not focusing on anything else, because you can't think about 2 things at the same time, right? So if I'm focusing on my breathing, I'm not thinking about, oh my gosh, what if I only have 2 people, or what if I have no people at my webinar tomorrow? What if I forget what I'm going to say? All of that stuff just kind of goes away because I'm just focusing on my breath. And then finally, it kind of wraps it all up in terms of that notion of meditation or mindfulness. And this is a quote that I love. It's by the Vietnamese Buddhist monk Thich Nhat Hanh. And he says, mindfulness is the energy that helps us recognize the conditions of happiness that are already present in our lives. And I think that that is such a powerful statement. And if we can let ourselves just focus on that positive stuff as we're falling asleep, if we're focusing on the positive things, we can't think about the negative stuff, right? Because we can't think about 2 things at the same time. So it's just a really great way to kind of get grounded in all that's still good and that we have to be thankful for. And I know that sounds super granola, but if it helps you to sleep, then hey, why not, right? So what if all of this isn't still paying off? You're still tired. Do you think maybe a nap might be in order? Well, it might be. Because we know that quality sleep supports your ability to be disciplined and to think clearly in order to meet all of the expectations and responsibilities that you have, either as a soldier, airman, or seaman, as a family member, as a friend, whatever other roles that you have. So if you aren't able to get that 7 to 9 hours, and it will fit into your day, this is key, right? You can't just nap because you're tired. You need to nap and not get fired, right? Like, this is important. So make sure that those things are clearly delineated in your day. But those naps can help make up for lost sleep. Some places are actually recognizing the importance of that, and North Bay has installed sleep pods. So I think that that's like so forward thinking, and it would be really exciting to see that kind of happening kind of all over the place. For them, it's a very specific reason, I think, because of what they do there. But I think that it certainly speaks to the importance of understanding that, you know, some people just have a hard time sleeping, and if you can get a half an hour nap in and you can increase productivity, like, win-win for the company, right? Um, so when you decide that napping is going to be something that you want to do, you got to think of a couple of things. It can't be too long, because then you'll get into that sleep inertia state and you're not going to wake up refreshed. And it can't be so short that it doesn't do anything. So you want to be somewhere in that less than 30 minutes ish, right? So right in that phase 1 and 2 or stage 1 and 2 of sleep. When you wake up will also determine when the best time for your nap is. So if you get up early, like at 6, you're going to want to nap around 1:30. And if you're getting up at 9, haha, who gets to get up at 9? Then you're probably better off napping at around 3. So you're going to want to have it. It's about a 6-ish hour, 6, 7 hours between waking up and nap time, right? So that's what we're looking at. But whenever you do decide to nap, make sure the conditions are right and make sure that you've checked it with your boss. The flip side to that, though, is there is some research to show that when you are just awake during the day, a substance in your brain, and I want to say it's adenosine, I have to double check that, but I want to say it's adenosine, builds up, and that buildup helps you to become sleepy over time. And what that does is it gets kind of to a critical mass so that by the time you go to bed, there's enough of this buildup that it says, yeah, time to go to sleep. So between the adenosine buildup, the melatonin, the light, and all the other stuff that you've done, hopefully that's all working to make you be falling asleep at bedtime. So when you nap, all that adenosine goes away, or whatever that substance is. Let's call it adenosine for right now. It goes away, and so it has to rebuild up again to get you to a place where you're going to be able to fall asleep at night. And I think that the difference is, for some people, and they know, and again, research has shown some people this is a problem, other people not so much. If you're a person who you know you can nap and it's not going to mess with your sleep, then absolutely that's probably a way that you're going to be able to try to get that sleep if you're not able to get it in that 7 to 9 hour chunk at night. If you're a person who, as soon as you nap, that's it, game over, you're up till 2 o'clock that night, then napping is not for you, and you're really going to have to work harder at trying to get that 7 to 9 hour block in at night. So just things to consider in terms of napping. Okay. And the last interesting thing that I'm going to talk about, and I think this is super fascinating, is sort of its two pieces. So there's banking sleep and then also shifting our day. So the shifting our day is, I'm going to start with that. And what they have found is that there is significant research to show that if we can get stuff started later, we actually do better. We know this to be true for school, and the military in the States has done huge, thousands of people were in the study. And they switched it so that they took their day and literally tilted it like about 25%. So instead of having everybody get up between 5 o'clock and 8 o'clock to be up for morning PT, they waited until to get people up more between 7 and 9, and then PT was shifted to the afternoon. And what they found when they did that was that morale went up, performance went up, academically and any other performance markers that they looked at, and they just did overall better. Their PT was better, and everything else that they did in the day was better. And we know this happens in schools as well. When you shift start time of school to later, like 9, 10 o'clock, all the kids' scores go up, because between 5 o'clock and 8 o'clock in the morning is when we sometimes get our best sleep. And here we are waking ourselves up at that time, and we're shortchanging ourselves this little beautiful pocket of super quality sleep, because that's how we've decided that the days need to start. So if we were able to shift that, yeah, so you'd be working out at 4 o'clock. Yeah, exactly, totally. And that's what they were finding was having really positive benefits on performance in terms of the benefits of the PT in and of itself, as well as overall performance in the day. So that's the piece about shifting the day. The banking of the sleep is something that is also really beneficial, especially if you know that you're, say, going into the field or going into an activity, or you're doing an ultra marathon or something where you know you're not going to get sufficient sleep, like less than 3 to 5 hours over 3 or more successive 24-hour periods of time. So what you need to do is, knowing that that's coming, you're going to dial it back to today, and you're going to start going to bed an hour or two earlier, and not progressively, like if you're trying to reset your sleep schedule, but now you're banking your time. So you are power sleeping. You are trying to get an hour or two extra sleep for 7 to 10 days prior to the period of time that you know that you're going to be sleep deprived. So again, that requires probably a huge life shift for a lot of people. But what they have found is that in those periods of time that in this case, soldiers, because that's what the one study was that they did, this huge one, it's from the Sleep Banking Improving Fighter Management Army Review Study. What they found was, in that period of time that they were banking the sleep, all the markers went up. Again, morale, performance, everything was up while they were getting the additional sleep. And then when they were in the period of time where they were not getting enough sleep, so they were in the sleep deprivation state of that timing, all of the ability to learn, understand, and retain new information and skills still was up. So it made you better after. So you bank your sleep, and then in that period of time where you're not actually getting enough sleep, you're still performing better. The problem with that is you can't just do that forever, right? Like you need to kind of recognize that this is coming up. I'm going to do it for this period of time. And then I got to go back to like resetting my sleep and making sure that I'm not running into a deficit. And then I can do this again at some future point. We can't get good at sleep deprivation just full stop. We can't say, I'm just going to get good at running on 3 hours of sleep. You won't, because as Florin had mentioned in the chat, at some point you do that enough and your body just says, I'm done, right? So this is a very separate thing. This is banking sleep for a specific period of time, as opposed to trying to learn how to deal with sleep deprivation, because you just don't get good at that. Performance continues to go down, even though in your mind you think your performance is still really good, right? Because your judgment isn't good at that point. So that's sleep banking. If you bank sleep, would you also have to treat afterwards, like recovering from a deficit? You know what? It didn't actually say what you needed to do afterwards. I think because you had banked it, and the performance markers and everything were really good in that period of sleep deprivation, you probably need to reset. But because you had saved up for it, you weren't really in a deficit, right? So you had prepared for it. So I don't know that you would still feel as great after. You still probably would need a period of time to adjust and get back to that. So that whole Japanese study, if you lost an hour of sleep, it takes 4 days to recover. But because you've banked it in advance of time, you sort of put it in the bank and then took it out later, as opposed to it never was in the bank before. Does that make sense? And then Rhonda, if you're already sleep deprived, banking won't work. Probably not. If you're sleep deprived, that sleep banking that you're doing is probably really just helping you to make up for the deficit that you're in. That said, if you know that there's a period of time coming up where you know you're going to be in more of a deficit, it's not going to hurt to bank as much sleep as you can in preparation of that. But if you're sort of stuck between, I'm already got this big deficit and I know I'm going to make more of a deficit. So yeah, I don't know. It's a little bit trickier. So a couple final thoughts then, guys. We need the amount of sleep that we need. And there's so much sleep research that still needs to be done, because there's some super fascinating questions around people who have been on, chronic antidepressant use or sleep medication for like years and years and years, or people who actually are missing a part of their brain that allows for REM sleep to happen, and they're still all fine and functioning. So why is that? And yet we know that it has all of these potential impacts. There's so much we don't know. So we know that we need to get as much sleep as we can. And I think it's one of those things that it just behooves us. I love that word so much. It behooves us to do the best we can to get that sleep. Even if it means that we're at 5 hours and we're getting 5 hours and 15 minutes, like every little bit that you can get, I think is going to help you. I mean, ideally we're going to get to 7 to 9, but you know what? Sometimes that's just not going to happen. So you're going to do the best you can with what you've got, put all of those other pieces into place. And it's, as I said, it's not going to make you drop dead tomorrow because you didn't get enough sleep the other day, right? Like it doesn't work that way, fortunately. Wow, because that would super suck. But everything that you can do to make sleep a priority is obviously something that's worth considering, is worth investing in. And if it's just one piece of a big set of things that you're working towards working on, then I think that's energy well spent. So, maybe just think about this now. As I said, I was hoping that this was going to be something that I could have done earlier on, because the period of time that we went through from sort of March 17th to now is kind of a period of time that would have been great for allowing that sleep reset to happen. But it's not too late. It's never too late, right? So just going forward, just let's learn from this opportunity that if we had a chance to slow down a little bit, maybe reprioritize, figure out what do I want to do differently? How do I want my going back into normal life to look? And can I do that for myself, so that whatever that new normal ends up being allows for some of these really positive things that we can do for our health to become a part of what that looks like for however long we need to do that. I do have a really short handout that has some of the information that we talked about. Why is it not there? Because it's there. Oh. Okay, hang on. Let me just find it and stick it in there, because I uploaded it on Friday, but obviously obviously it wanted to make me look like a big liar and not have it there. Fortunately, I can sleep debt handout. There you go. All right, so that's your sleep debt handout, and it's got some tips in there if you'd like to check those out. And then finally, our resources. And again, I highlighted the importance of accessing those as much as is possible for you to do to get yourself as in shape physically, mentally, emotionally, and psychologically as you can. So use those resources as much as is available to you. And then finally, our final poll. And oh, there it is. Oh, sometimes, see, didn't get enough sleep. So there's our last poll. And I actually even got it in, yeah, so there you go. So guys, thank you so much. So glad you joined us. We have one more for those of you who are joining us on Tuesdays. We've got one last session tomorrow. Heather's got 3 more injury reduction ones coming up later in July. And do keep checking back. We've got fewer options available now for you because of the summer and with people going back to work. But it was really great having you all here this morning. Good luck. Did I send the handout? I thought I did. Did it work? I mean, I can repost it. Hang on. There. Is it there? Okay. Sorry. So sorry that I went over. I tried talking as fast. Did it go? How about now? Is it there now? Okay. Still no? Yes. Okay. So sorry that I went long. I tried to speak fast, but apparently I didn't speak fast enough. So in any event, thank you for sticking around. And that's it for, we don't have that other poll question anymore. So good luck. happy sleeping, get that alarm clock, and take good care and enjoy. It's sunny in Edmonton today, so I don't know where it's like where you are, but hopefully you are able to have a great day. And I'm actually going to just turn my camera.